You're now being recorded. Well, welcome
Um,
everybody. We have Corey Abesa here to do the Filipino food cuisine deep dive. And Corey, thank you so much for being our guinea pig in first demo.
yeah, Thank you for allowing me to, I guess, go through this process. And I'm gonna say, everyone, this is my first time ever doing a cooking demonstration live during COVID and cooking Filipino food all at the same time. So just bear with me. Um, I have a little presentation that we can use as a guideline first, and then we'll just more have an open talk discussion. I can pull it up right now.
You should be good to share. I made you a co-host.
Okay. Can everybody see the presentation? Okay. So start over again. So hi everyone, my name is Corey Abesa. I am currently, I just got a job. So I'm currently working at Albertsons brand as a project manager within the product development team. I am responsible for a lot of the new own brand items that are coming into our plethora of projects. So I just started, so I'm not too sure what I might expect, but I have a job. So very nice to have. And then for this happy hour, I'd like to talk a little bit about my culture and then some little, I guess, my experience with Filipino food. So in this presentation, I'm going to be talking about primarily like my educational background, since I see a lot of students here as well too, so I want to share about that. What is my take on Filipino cuisine? I'm not a historian. I went to school for food science, so part of me, my history of Filipino cuisine isn't as in depth, but I tried to. And then I also want to talk about what is that idea of authenticity. I talked to Kimberly previously a couple of weeks ago about this idea of how can we approach food in a way that is still culturally acceptable, especially in the topic of like what is considered nutritious without watering down the culture that is present and ruining its reputation. And feel free to ask any questions at any time as well too. So just a little about my educational background. I actually started at food science at Cal State Long Beach right when they disbanded their program. So when that happened, it was kind of like a whirlwind of figuring out where I can go. So I went to community college for a little while, did some of my transfer requires to get to Cal Poly Pomona, and eventually got my bachelor's in food science with a minor in culinary. And I think it was fate that told me to go to Cal Poly Pomona because I wouldn't have discovered RCA. And I don't think Cal State Long Beach had a culinology program, but Cal Poly did. And then at my time at Cal Poly Pomona, I competed in the two RCA student competitions. I competed in the evolution of food waste, the sustainability competition, and we won first place with a product using green banana flour. So that was like my first exposure to the life of a RCA student. And then the second competition was last year in 2019. We competed in the Savory Culinology competition in Kentucky. And that one was more focused on the food service, developing a product for a dish primarily for a food service plate. So we designed this plate for, I believe it was tender greens, with that concept of making a golden standard, putting it through commercialization. So thank you, RCA, for putting me in this path to where I am now. And then let's start off with talking about what is Filipino cuisine. When we think of Filipino cuisine, a lot of people may think of it as like, I guess, the standard dishes. You have adobo, maybe people think of lumpia, like the fried little egg rolls that we have present. If we think about the origin in where those dishes actually come from, Filipinos, there is a author that talked about, we have this concept of borrow and adapt. So if we look at our history, we have a lot of dishes that are coming from China way back then. So like the lumpia and anything that kind of see almost has a Chinese influence, that was already borrowed and adapted into Filipino culture. And then 1100 AD, we saw more spices and new ingredients come into our country. So when you see different part of the archipelago islands, 7,000 islands of the Philippines, you have things like ginger, galangal, coconut milk. That you're like, oh, I didn't know that's part of the Filipino culture. And it is, because somehow we borrowed and adapted that. And then moving into Spain and Mexico, we have adapted their sense of what it is to marinate or to have like a shelf extended system to cook things. So we have our adobo, which is simmered in vinegar. Then moving on to the 20th century, we see a lot of American Filipinos getting into like Spam. And I don't know if y'all know this, I grew up actually in Virginia, so Spam is my like bloodline, and I love Spam. So if you ever see a Filipino, you know they grew up with either Spam, Vienna sausage, or some type of canned good. And that's all because of how we have borrowed and adapted during that wartime culture when certain commodities, even like tomato paste or tomatoes, weren't as common. So we had to source for tomato paste, for other things too. And then for the present day, there are a lot of Filipino chefs that are now introducing new concepts of what is Filipino. What is it to be Filipino within the United States? And so when we look at this colorful spread of food, this spread is called the kamayan or a boodle fight. It primarily is just like a gathering for everyone in a family or household or friends to be able to eat together with your hands. Probably not the best choice to do during COVID, but it is kind of fun. There could be so many different types of foods present during a kamayan, but primarily our most common dishes are something like an adobo, something that has been simmered in soy sauce and vinegar. So it'll have that balance between that kind of salty, vinegary kind of sense. You also have your sweets. Filipinos love sweet things. If you ever tried certain Filipino barbecues or certain sauces, the majority of their sauces all contain ketchup. And ketchup is, I don't know how it gets into like our spaghetti and other certain dishes, but it does. That's like that concept of borrow and adapt. There's also dishes like certain fishes, since the Philippines is kind of that surrounding that nautical sense, you'll find a lot of fried fishes and a lot of fried seafoods. But when you're enjoying all this food and you're like, oh, it's so good, like I can eat so much, you actually cannot. It is super filling. And also, if you're fighting against all your family and friends, it is really hard to get enough to eat, especially when you're in a combined setting. But that brings me to like my kind of last topic about what's authentic. Before I get into some of the dishes that I made with my interpretation, when I think of the word authentic, sometimes it comes off as not as genuine as I think what true authentic Filipino cuisine is, because I grew up in Virginia. A Filipino Virginia boy doesn't scream as authentic cuisine as someone that was born in the Philippines. But my experience of what authentic cuisine is primarily is influenced by my experience and background. And when I try to research like what is that concept of like what Filipino authentic cuisine is, there is a author and cookbook rock star, Amy Basa, that talks about how you can think about authenticity as your own individual experience with your household. So whatever your cuisine is, or whatever your upbringing is, background is, what's authentic to you is definitely different and authentic than to someone else's family. You can put in an example. Filipinos are super prideful. They will always say, my grandmother has the best adobo, and she's definitely better than yours. Well, her grandma could be from a different island or different city than my grandma. So it's going to be super different. And I think that's the way that we can all approach food, is that we come from different backgrounds, live in different circumstances. And then when we try to cook our food, it is more of an extension of our experiences and our comfort. So what my comfort food is definitely influenced by a lot of fried chicken, a lot of soul food. My mom was actually a chef back in DC, so a lot of her cooking was more Mediterranean and Italian. That does not scream Filipino. So when I've tried to cook all this for you, this was a challenge and also a connection to my own identity of what I think I should be emanating as Filipino. So thank you for letting me kind of talk about the little background, but now let's show you some food. Sorry, I'm gonna just kind of just lean this down. So the most common dishes that I per se will say that I cook for Filipino cuisine.
Hey, Corey,
Yeah.
stop sharing screen and then you can pop in as a bigger video.
Oh, okay, sure. Is that better?
Yep.
I'll go
yeah.
lower.
Look at that. Yeah.
I'll go here. So what I wanted to cook for everyone is that I wanted to share what your experience coming into my household would be like in terms of how I cook Filipino food. So if you're gonna ask that Filipino down the street how they're gonna cook their food in their house and what is authentic, it's definitely gonna be different than how I'm gonna show you. A lot of my own cooking style I've seen is more derived on my Southeast Asian comfort food. So I've noticed that a lot of my own Filipino cuisine is more influenced by the Indonesian Thai side, because I love those like super fragrant ingredients like galangal or ginger or shallots, and coconut milk. And that's not as common as some other Filipinos or most people understand. Like you can find chicken adobo that's made out of coconut milk, and someone would be like, "Oh, that's not possible." I'm like, "Yes, it is. Just not in your area." And so what I've prepared today is pandesal. Pandesal is a type of bread that is served usually in between say like a lunch or dinner, or if you're me, I eat it all the time. And pandesal is influenced by Spain. So when the Philippines were conquered by Spain, we got introduced to a new commodity of flour, especially wheat flour. And so when we in the Philippines took that, they kind of interpreted how they can be making their own type of bread. So let me set it for everyone so you can see. Hopefully this is good. And the style that I actually made the bread is, I grew up with Golden Corral. I don't know if everybody knows what Golden Corral is. I love their dinner rolls. Their dinner rolls are just like memories to me. And so the way that I make my pandesal is actually I do more bread flour to AP flour. And it's really different. It's pretty different from other Filipino recipes I've seen online in families. Most pandesal you see is very airy. So I don't know if you can see from a camera perspective, but mine is actually pretty dense because Golden Corral's dinner rolls with just a little bit of butter is just amazing. So I just wanted to make a bread that just kind of screams that childhood experience of going to Golden Corral at night with my family. But moving on to meat. The meat that I prepared is like the standard chicken adobo. But with normal chicken adobo, it's usually just a ratio between soy sauce and vinegar. However, for mine, I love that kind of sweet, sour consistency. I included lemon juice into mine, a little of mirin or sweet cooking wine, some brown sugar, because Filipinos love everything sweet. That's like how I do. And so when I think about how I'm going to teach my future generations how to make chicken adobo, the way that I'm going to present what's authentic to me and what's comforting is that sense of sweet, sour, salty, tangy balance. Um, and some Filipino families may like say like, "Oh, yours is too sweet," and I'm like, "Well, because I like it sweet." So I think that's how I'm going to approach explaining it to whoever I'm serving in food wise. And I'm actually going to plate it to show like I'm actually serving everyone. Um, the next dish that let's talk about is a dish called laing. Laing is a taro leaves taro leaves simmered and stewed in coconut milk with fragrances like onions, garlic, ginger. Um, the coloring is due to like a black bean sauce, and you just simmer it for about an hour till it's kind of reduced down to this kind of cream of spinach kind of look. That's what I kind of think of it as. And I didn't look into what the the reason why this is kind of makes you itchy. I'll think about it later on. But when I think about the Philippines as being like this kind of country of borrow and adapt, we're taking these ingredients, something like taro leaves, what I haven't seen many other cultures do, and then making it our own. And I love cream of spinach, so I put double the amount of coconut in this to make it as much as that similar consistency, maybe as you get at like Boston Market. Um, and I love Boston Market too. Yeah, as you can see too, it's kind of like the stewed consistency. I've seen some Filipino chefs, like in Los Angeles, there's a chef owned restaurant called Lasa, and Lasa actually makes a laing out of kale, spinach, and other greens. So you definitely can get creative on what you can stew in coconut milk. And the last thing that is a staple in any Filipino household is rice. It is so hard to be keto and Filipino. There's like no ifs or buts. You have to have rice, especially when you have all these other savory things. You just need something that's just gonna soak it all together. Um, but my only problem with sometimes Filipino cuisine is sometimes it's not as balanced, especially if you're eating all this heavy food. So what I did in this rice dish is I just made jasmine rice, the Asian finger method. I don't know if anybody knows that, but we can talk about what that is. And stir fried some ginger in some sesame oil and then fluffed it with some rice vinegar. So it's something that's not as plain and boring as regular rice, but it also has that kind of like refreshing florally smell from garlic. And you, if you're gonna eat any of these foods, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to find a way to eat rice or some other grain because a Filipino grandmother will tell you you need to eat rice with this. Um, and then last but not least, I don't know if you notice, I'm only using a fork and spoon. You can ignore the knife here. Whatever Filipino household you go to, and there's a couple of restaurants in New York as well, Filipino ones, they only give you a fork and spoon because every Filipino that I know only uses a fork and spoon for some reason. We don't cut with a knife. My grandma used to say like, we're too poor for knives. I'm like, well, we cut something somehow, but you can find that there is almost a sense of connection between Filipinos and the sense of utensils that we use. Especially now since we can't do commands and use our hands, fork and spoon is the way to go. So if I am serving you and you are in my house, expect a lot of food, expect a food coma, expect some type of dessert after, and expect to be well fed and I guess welcomed by a Filipino guy from Virginia. So I think that's it so I can get off my knees, but Hope you all enjoy. I hope everyone can make these recipes too, just so I can see everyone enjoying it as well.
I have a question. Jerome, is everything he said true?
Is Jerome here?
He's here.
Oh.
Hello.
Hey, Jerome.
Hold on. Yes, it's very true. And even to what Corey was saying, like how he cooked his dishes is like completely not how I would cook my Filipino dishes. I'm like the worst Filipino to like cook Filipino food ever. But yeah, it's a lot of vinegar, a lot of soy. There's always like stuff that's sweet, like Jollibee. If you know Jollibee and Jollibee spaghetti sauce, like I worked at my previous job trying to match their tomato sauce, and there's so much sugar and like it's so sweet. I don't understand, like being Filipino American, being born here, like I don't understand that flavor. But you know, my cousins and everyone back home and all the Filipinos that I know that grew up on it, they love that stuff. They love sweet spaghetti with hot dogs in it and cheddar cheese.
And cheddar cheese,
yeah, not a thing. So.
Well, what do y'all think?
There's a way to set the bar really high.
We want to eat it, Corey.
Well, please cook it. I mean, I timed it. I cooked everything in an hour and a half, so you can do it. And honestly, I think I love also Filipino food because there is like a simplicity into it. You probably have a lot of the ingredients if you cook other types of Asian foods. It's just kind of rethinking what is Filipino food with those concepts and like those key things of having that sweet, salty, tangy, hopefully not too sweet kind of flavor profiles.
When you go home, whatever, Virginia, wherever that is, now, I mean, what is like the top dish you look forward to having? And is there a dessert that you're just over the moon about that's specifically Filipino?
My favorite Filipino dish has to do anything that's breakfast related. So in Filipino cuisine, we usually have something called like a topsilog or a losilog. It's that combination of a meat, egg, garlic fried rice, and some type of sauce. I love fried eggs with rice and that's just like, I think that's how simple it is. Love that having for breakfast, except the garlic breath. That's not good. But in terms of dessert, I think it's changed. I think I've been trying to tell my family to cook other types of food because we've only been stuck cooking the same Filipino food for generations. But my favorite Filipino dessert, it has to be halo-halo. And halo-halo is that shaved ice with evaporated milk, some condensed milk, got leche flan, ube ice cream, and all these different like fruits inside. Definitely not a healthy dessert, but it is refreshing on a hot day. Does anybody have any questions or?
Yeah, I want to know more about this banana ketchup that Jerome mentioned.
Let me get it.
Banana ketchup?
Yeah.
What?
It's ketchup, but it's got like cooked and like a banana puree in it. So it adds sweetness to already sweet like ketchup. And that's a huge bottle. That's a huge bottle.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's literally banana ketchup.
That's amazing. That's brand new to me, man.
They even have a spicy version. So
yeah,
try the spicy.
Oh. I'll write that down.
I was gonna say, like, you live in Chicagoland area, right, Corey?
No, I actually live in the Bay Area.
Oh, never mind. I was gonna say, where can I get that in Chicagoland? Because I know there's a Super H Mart, but that was my Korean friend brought me there for all the goods for stuff.
You actually can find this in H Mart.
Perfect.
I saw some guy buying this at H Mart. I was like, why are you buying it here at H Mart? He's like, well, I can't find it anywhere else. I'm like, Okay, sure.
Perfect. I'm gonna try it out then. Jamie, I'm bringing it next week.
Sweet.
It
I'll
is
be in tomorrow.
super sweet though. You really have to. It's super sweet and gelatinous.
It
I
does
don't know
have a
if that's-
funky texture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned keto because I've been keto for the past 4 months or so, and it's entirely a cuisine that I can't really deal with right now. But I think for banana ketchup, of all things, I might have to take a diet break.
Well, Kimberly and I were talking about before how all the food that you see here, when we think in the context of nutrition, what are some ways that we can still have this sense of authentic flavor profiles, but yet still think about the well-being of who we serve and stuff? That's something I always grapple with because I'm like, oh, I can't eat Filipino food every day because that's going to be a bad choice. So
You just have to serve it with a thimble.
yeah.
Portion control.
Yeah.
That's it.
Tell that to his grandmother.
Yeah, no, can't tell that to me.
I understand.
So I noticed there wasn't any, there's not a lot of, I mean, in what you chose to present to us, there wasn't a lot of like dry spices. Is that common where most of it's just fresh for the most part, right? Besides like, peppercorns or bay leaves, that kind of a thing? Or is there way more spices involved that I'm just not aware of?
Well, I mean, there are 7,000 islands. Maybe one of those islands has spices, but I've seen majority in like the mainland in Manila, it's more just salt, pepper, vinegar, soy sauce, bay leaves, and then your aromatics. So I think sometimes Filipino food is a little too simple unless you kind of think about how you can make it your own. But no, I'd love to figure out where in the Philippines are they actually using more spices, because we've been conquered so many times. Gotta have spices somewhere.
You said bay leaves. I mean,
Yeah, that's
counts.
one thing. Yeah.
So they
I
don't
want to
I
go back to
actually
the.
use
Go ahead.
any dried spices in traditional cuisines.
any
From what
dried
I've
spice.
discovered, a lot of countries that have a lot of fresh produce will only use the fresh produce and only dry out what they need that's not seasonal. So a lot of times you can't really buy packaged spices because it's not necessary.
Are you standing in your kitchen?
Yes, Jamie, I am.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I have this like divider between like my kitchen and my dining room and my living room and like all the rest of the rooms in my house.
You pour yourself a drink like you're serving at the bar, and then you go back around.
I do. I like also like put on this bow tie when I'm like serving myself.
I do
Well,
want to go back to the comments about nutrition status and how we as food professionals can talk with sensitivity to different cultures' foods. When I was working more as a nutritionist in medical care, we would come up with this like list of ingredient substitutions without any regard to, or not regard, but awareness of those ingredients, the availability and knowledge or background of those ingredients with our patients. And I don't know if anyone else in this call has a nutrition background, but we are all professionals serving food or providing materials for food. So I'd like to ask you the same question that Corey started to ask. How do we talk about these foods within the context of, the fact that we're not in that country of origin. Perhaps these foods are not sustainable to eat every day. How do we talk to people who do follow these menus and diets with sensitivity? How do we talk to them that way?
I think what it comes down to really is, the idea of balance, moderation, and variety, which can be, a tough concept to grasp when that's your bread and butter, that's your staple to to reach for, and you build your dishes a certain way. But you know, like a lot of the things that Corey talked about, there's so much balance already built into those dishes. It's, you can kind of rethink how you, maybe it's just how you arrange your plate, or you know, how you mix up kind of what region of that area you're gonna focus on, and you make small tweaks to, you know, what you're consuming. Maybe it's, you know, the same type of cuisine, but small changes in order to, you know, both have a different experience and you know, keep a level of balance in the diet. Because for me, like, I don't have a huge you know, cultural food background. I just, you know, kind of grew up eating. My parents would cook kind of some ethnic dishes, but not a whole lot. So like when I get interested in different regions of food and things, it's always, you know, it's a lot of variety, because I try all sorts of different regions of food and different cultural foods. But it's always kind of in rotation. So it's easy for me to say balance, moderation, and variety, rather for someone who that's, you know, that's all they know, or that's their comfort staple. So.
I think it also goes to how diverse they want to be. You know, instead of like white rice, let's do brown rice, or let's do, you know, a little healthier greens in the coconut stewed. You know, it's kind of just, you know, white bread versus brown bread, this versus that. You know, like how authentic do you want to be, or do you want to be authentic but just elevating the health and nutrition of it? So just suggesting here and there, not suggesting the whole menu change, but just one or two things during the week if someone needs to change. Or say like, yes, go all out one day, but during the rest, let's rein it in a little bit too. So I think it's not necessarily compromises, or I mean, it is compromises, but it's also just choices. And, you know, how strict is someone, like, oh, I'm not going to eat that, I'm not going to eat that. But it's like, well, it's also your health too. So, you know, what do you value more?
Does anybody remember in one of the Powered Up sessions, they put up a question on how people consider what to be authentic? I can't remember what the answer was to that. They put out 4 things. It was like, is it the chef that makes it authentic? Is it the ingredients? Is it the type of cooking method? Does anybody remember what they said for that?
No, but I know what you're talking about, because I thought what an awesome way to look at it.
Yeah.
It was a very, very cool point of view, where it wasn't just, you know, because to me, before I even heard that, it was kind of like, well, obviously ingredients make it authentic, and, you know, the knowledge of the chef using those ingredients make it authentic. But then they had like a whole nother array of things that people, actual consumers, thought was authentic. Good point. I should look into that.
I'm trying to
Also, like, oh, sorry. Like, budget-wise, it's tough, and because of COVID, it's kind of tough. But if you can, like, expose yourself to a lot of global cuisines, just, you know, eating out, or, you know, like, events like this definitely helps for sure. And also, like, experimenting with different ingredients. Like, I know I was doing, like, a paleo type thing before, and I was playing around with coconut aminos in place of soy sauce, for example, and was kind of just trying to play around with it to get the flavors to be a little more similar to soy sauce, because I know, like, as an Asian, like, I can't live without soy sauce, like, as much as I can't live without rice. So I'm always experimenting with, you know, cauliflower rice, and I'm not happy with it right now, but I'm trying to, like, find somewhere a medium in between where, you know, taste is there, the authenticity is there, and the nutrition as well.
Well, flour rice, you just have to wait for your palate to change. Eventually you'll like it more and more. That's all. Your palate adapts.
So Corey, do you have any being the first, thank you for setting the bar outside of the stratosphere here, but do you have any feedback or any kind of suggestions that maybe you want to throw out, so that way whoever, you know, down the line wants to do this, they've kind of got some idea of what they're getting themselves into?
Yeah, sure. I guess yesterday I kind of cried a little just watching like documentaries and just reading more about what food means to me. I think this is such a transparent and vulnerable space, but where we can be talking about different issues and our own experiences. So when I was thinking about how I was going to talk about this and what I felt like I should be able to present, I think whoever is next, just really think about what is that concept of food to you, and then how do you want to talk about it. I kept thinking about a lot of the food I cook is comfort food. So what is my sense of comfort food, and how will I tell you about why do I like this comfort? It was a very reflecting kind of month, just thinking about why do I have like these sometimes aversions to my own cuisine, or why do I crave Boston Market sometimes more than this food, or Golden Corral. So yeah, I think this is a really great experience for anybody to be thinking about what does their cooking, if they're going to do cooking, what is their cooking style and what does food mean to them?
Thank you.
Will any of these recipes be in the Culinology Under Quarantine cookbook?
You know what? I feel like, yes, they could be, but I think I want to tweak them a little more. Like, I think I've seen so many, how other chefs interpret Filipino food and how they tie in their own experiences. There's some like things that I think I might tweak more just to show like, this is me in my own food. So hopefully soon.
I'll email you the disclaimer later.
Sure.
Wow, Corey, thank you so much. This was incredible. And I echo Jamie, you set a really high bar. So who's next? I'm kidding. I have a couple of ideas for people. So, but let me know if you guys would like to demo virtually anything. We'll even take probably a knitting demo at this point. But thank you, Corey, so much for your vulnerability and transparency here. It means a lot to have you plate that dish and really put your heart out there for us, even a million miles away. And I'm just so grateful to each of you. And Corey, thank you for being the guinea pig here.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone for just listening, and I'm sorry I was late. There's so many dishes you don't see, so I'm really glad you don't see that happening.
No, we want to see. Turn the camera.
Oh, can you see?
Behind the scenes.
I mean, it's not too bad, but there are dishes. I just did not clean as I go because I was just like, go, go, go.
Movie magic.
But I'd love to see or hear maybe next time we get together, just what is everybody's comfort food? I mean, we all grew up in different places, and like, I would love to see who is someone on the East Coast different from the West Coast, and we're all pretty different too. So yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
What if that's our next thing? What if it's a group potluck? And we all just kind of show up with our favorite comfort food made, or we're able to just speak to it. I mean, I keep tequila at my desk, so I don't have to prepare. Just kidding, it's downstairs. This bottle's gone. But that's a really cool thing too, because I feel like comfort food means so many different things to so many different people. Sometimes it's super ethnic and super, not to throw that out there, but authentic, right? And sometimes it's just ice cream sandwich to someone else. So it's kind of an interesting concept.
Agreed. I really liked hearing about your specific relationship to the food, Corey. It was really interesting, as well as some of the tweaks you made to the, American or Virginia hybrids of things you grew up loving. So that was really, really cool to hear about.
Yeah, disclaimer, I haven't been to Golden Corral, I think, in over 10, know what it may be like anymore, but it was good in my mind.
I love Golden Corral. I'll admit it. It's great. It has a special place in my heart.
If I had to guess, Corey, it probably hasn't changed much in the last 10 years.
Yeah, they're super consistent.
Yeah, I don't think I've
that's
ever
the game.
done that. They don't have it by me.
Me and my parents have actually been to Golden Corral for Thanksgiving before. Because I'm an only child, and one time we just didn't want to cook, so we just went there. It was great.
Well, thanks everybody for joining this Hustlers event. Thank you again, Corey, so much for cooking for us and sharing this amazing menu. I am so glad you shared the recipe beforehand, so I will be doing that for family meal at some point. Yeah, I love the idea of next session, next happy hour will be comfort food. So bring your dish, be ready to talk about it, whatever you want to do. And we'll test the breakout sessions then. I'll just keep saying that because I just never get around to actually breaking us into small groups. So I'll send the doodle for availability for the next, I think I picked several weeks in July, so hopefully we'll get something that works. Also, if July and August are really busy because you might actually be starting to go out before second wave quarantine starts, then that's also okay. We'll just look at what our availabilities are. Again, congratulations, Corey, for your new job. Thank you. I know you pulled some all-nighters on this recipe development here.
Yeah, just a little, but I mean, it was definitely fun, and I mean, I have leftovers for hopefully next week, so that should be good.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
That's
Thanks
part
for
of
joining.
food. It's leftovers.
Yeah, that is true. You cook in bulk.
So send your availability, and then if you are interested in a specific diversity and inclusion conversation, please do email me, and I will set up a different time for that. Last questions, last statements from the group?
Kimberly, did you say you're gonna send out like a doodle or something like that to let us know availability, or just whenever?
I will send a doodle for the next Hustlers Happy Hour with kind of some comments, and I took a couple of pictures, Corey, while you were doing your demo, and I'll send those as well. And some notes. So yeah, you can follow that link. Or Lauren, are you on the Discord page? But you can follow the link to the doodle in a couple of different places, so I'll make sure to send that out. All right, everyone, have a great night. Thank you.
Be safe.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for setting this up.
Thanks again, Corey.
Bye. Thank you, Corey.
Bye. Have a good night, everyone.